All right, what's up, everybody? Back today with another breakdown of a four-game NBA slate. Today, just me again, but hopefully able to get you some good information as you're looking at these games and what you want to do with them tonight. We did have Chicago and Toronto postponed with all the COVID issues that Chicago has going on, so we went from a 5-game to a 4-game. So we're gonna walk through those four and hopefully help find some good spots to bet. Definitely appreciate it if you would give a like to the video. Also, leave your comments what you're looking at. I'm always happy to hear from other people about what they're seeing on these games, as I obviously just have one perspective. So let's jump into the games. First one up, we have the Pistons taking on the Pacers. For the Pistons, they do have Jeremy Grant out for a while now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of that on the Pistons. Also, Killian Hayes is a game-time decision. And this is a team that really doesn't need to be missing any more decent players. They're already on a 12-game losing streak. And during that 12 games, they've averaged losing by 10.25 points. So they're really not close most of the time. And this is a team that a few weeks ago, I was kind of high on their ability to compete, but they just haven't proven that. So not as high as I used to be. On the Pacers side, Sabonis now apparently has said he does not want to be in Indiana anymore. And you never know how these things are going to affect a team, if it messes things up in the locker room, or maybe it's not a big deal. I mean, these Indiana guys, we've known that they're on the trade block for like a week now, and Indiana's actually performed pretty well. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that. The one thing I mentioned with Jeremy Grant being out, let's look at the impact of that. So he's only been out for 2 games, really small sample size, obviously. But in those 2 games, they've scored 99.3 points with him and 104 without him. So they've actually scored more. But they've given up 108.6 when he's played, and they're giving up 119 on average in the 2 where he hasn't played. And this kind of holds true if you look at offensive and defensive rating. Basically, the Pistons have been fine without Jeremy Grant on offense. I think that's probably especially true since Cade Cunningham is kind of leading the charge now. But they have not been so okay on defense. And so I think they're going to struggle to hold most teams. Now, sometimes Indiana holds themselves down, and that's always a possibility. But in terms of the team they're playing, they shouldn't face a lot of defensive resistance today. One of the key stats I look at for Indiana is their 3-point percentage, because when they're 34% or less, they're only 3-13 on the season. Like, they really struggle to win, let alone cover a spread. When they're over 34, they're 9-5, but we've talked about this before, really 9-1, except for the first couple weeks of the season. And that should be good going against Detroit's defense tonight. Detroit allows 38% from 3-point range, 37.9% away from home. And they've had 5 straight games where they've allowed over 34% from the field. So the question here really is, are we wanting to jump in on this spread? The last I looked, it was at 9.5, I believe. Let's check that quick. It's 10.5 now. Man, that's just a huge spread with an Indiana team that's super inconsistent. So this is a spot for me where I think I would look potentially at a live bet, although this just feels like one of those games that could be ugly and maybe you just stay away from. But if any of you have an angle that fits with any of that data and stuff, maybe it's something that you want to jump on. But this is a game I probably won't be putting too much stock in today. I think there are some better spots. The next game we've got is Philadelphia and Brooklyn, and this is really like the battle of who's left on the court. For Philadelphia right now, it looks like everyone should play, but we know what they've been doing with Embiid, and they're on a back-to-back, and so you can't be shocked if he gets ruled out like an hour before the game. Curry also is supposed to be a game-time decision. I wouldn't be shocked if they held him out either. And so I think you have to go into this assuming that Embiid and Curry don't play if you want to bet on Philadelphia. And then if they do, it's like an added bonus for you, but I really don't think you can count on it. On the Brooklyn side of things, I'm just going to tell you who isn't out, because the list of who is out is so long that we're not going to go through it. So they have Patty Mills, Durant, Blake Griffin, and Claxton. Those are the people who have actually been getting playing time in the last month or whatever, who are still going to be on the court tonight. They've got other young guys that are going to be filling into those spots. And so this is a game, honestly, from an analytics perspective, that's really hard to cap, because how do you know how well they're going to score? How do you know what their efficiency is going to look like on offense? How do you know how these new guys are going to come in and play on the defensive side of the ball? So it is tough, but a few things that I would share. One is on the Philadelphia side, and I think that this one does matter. So in their last 5 games away from home, they scored 110 and 119 against Charlotte. But other than that, they've scored 91, 98, and 87. So this Philadelphia team is just a team that with Embiid or without him is not scoring the ball right now. They're pretty putrid on offense. And so if Brooklyn can come in and play at a slow pace like Philadelphia does, if they can play some decent defense, I think they can neutralize Philadelphia to some extent on the offensive end of the floor again. So Philly's not scoring. Brooklyn, on the other hand, has been scoring well, even as Durant and Harden have kind of taken turns sitting out. They've had 107 in one game, but the other 4 out of their last 5 at home, they've been over 110. Now, Brooklyn is 3-10-1 against the spread at home, so that is not a good look for them. However, at the same time, they do tend to win when they're at home. They're 9-5 at home straight up. And so they play in a lot of close games, and the spread here is really close. I mean, it's basically a pick 'em. In terms of other things that we'd look at for this game, I would say that there's lots of stuff on the under here when you look at trends. And again, I don't look at as many trends as Tech does. He brings more of that to the table, but I have, found some resources to look at some of that. And there's quite a bit on the under. The one thing that isn't is this matchup has gone over in 5 of the last 7 where these two teams have played. So I think I would lean toward the under here because Philadelphia has been so poor at scoring, because Brooklyn has, obviously they have Durant, but other than that, they have so many people out. I think this is a game where both teams try to slow it down. And unless somebody catches fire shooting, I don't see a lot of points coming in this game. And so that's probably the angle I like best, either the under or even Philadelphia's team total under, which I believe was at like 106.5, maybe. You'd have to double check that. So a little bit of a hard game to cap there, but maybe you have some other advantages you see. The next game is one that I'm really interested in, probably the one I've been seeing the most talk about on Twitter today, and that is the Knicks and the Rockets. So the Knicks are on a 4-game losing streak. They have been pretty bad overall as a team this year, and especially since Kemba went out, which I thought would help them, but really it hasn't helped them much. In this game, they have Barrett, Grimes, and Toppin are all game-time decisions, but it looks like there's a chance that some or all of them could play, and I do think that helps the Knicks if those guys are in. I think especially Toppin has been playing pretty well, and it doesn't hurt them to have more scorers, which Grimes and Barrett both can be. So watch for that in terms of roster news. On Houston's side, the big news is that Christian Wood might still be out, and Christian Wood is really important to this team. He's their biggest presence in the middle. He can shoot it from the outside. He can create some offense. And so I do think it definitely is a negative for the Rockets if he can't play. And last I saw, he was doubtful. So with that roster news said, a couple things in terms of the numbers. First of all, Houston has absolutely been scoring the ball on offense here in the last 10 games. In the last 5, they've put up 114 or more in 4 out of the 5. And the only one where they didn't was this that's the last 5 at home. The only one where they didn't was against Oklahoma City. Most teams we see don't score much, and Oklahoma City doesn't score much against them. But the other 4 of their last 5 at home, they put up 114 plus. The key numbers that I've been talking about with Houston for a while now is shooting 47% from the field and 33% from three-point range. If you go look back and they do those two things, they're at least in games generally. And they've been doing that really well. In their last 5 at home, they've been over that 47 mark in 4 out of 5, and they've been over the 33 mark from three-point range in 4 out of 5. So really shooting the ball pretty well. Here's the thing, though, is New York's defense. Like, I've been talking about how freaking terrible their defense is. I think yesterday or a couple days ago, I said their numbers are basically the same as Sacramento. They just play slower. And I stand by that, man. That's the way that it's looking. So the Knicks allow 42.7% from the field away, and 34.3% from three-point range. But here's the big thing for me is that they've allowed over 34% from three-point range in 7 straight games. And this is the majority of the games where Kemba's been out and their defense has been terrible. If you've watched Houston play recently, they like to play fast and they like to jack up a ton of threes. And so I think the way that they go down in this game, or the way they don't score, is if they get those looks from three, which New York's been giving up, and they just miss them. But the way they've been playing lately and going back home and the way they were shooting there, I feel like I'm pretty willing to bet on Houston coming in here and being able to shoot the ball well against a team that isn't likely to play great defense. And so the spots that I tend to like in this spot, I like Houston. I think that spreads come all the way down to like +5 now. Let's check that. Yeah, I mean, well, I see there's a 5, yeah, like 5 or 4.5. And that started out at 6.5 today. Obviously, I like 6.5 better, but I think Houston has a chance to just win this game outright. The only thing that gives me pause is Christian Wood being out. If he was in, I think I'd be in on Houston to win the game here. The other thing that I do like here, based on what I just shared with you guys, is that I do like the over a little bit, at least a look at that. I think Houston's going to score a lot of points. And one of Houston's weaknesses has definitely been their defense. They like to play fast and they don't always play great defense. So I think that sets up a good game environment for the over. My only real concern there is the Knicks have been so terrible, but maybe they can come in here and play decent offense, especially if they get a few of those scores back. In terms of the trends, I will also say there is much more on the side of the Houston against the spread and much more on the side of the over. There's some on each side, but it's weighted heavily in those two directions. So on this card, I think these are two of my favorite spots probably are Houston against the spread and then the over between the Knicks and the Rockets. All right, we got one more game to talk about, and that is the Washington Wizards and the Phoenix Suns. Looks like Spencer Dinwiddie will not be playing for the Wizards, and we have Devin Booker out again, but Ayton should be in. And we've talked about how if they can get Ayton or Booker, they still are a really solid team, and it's really more harmful for them when both of those guys are out. Washington offensively sucks. I mean, there's not really any way around it. They do not score the ball. In their last 5 away from home, they've scored 105, 107, 106, 90, just not scoring well. And then they're allowing a lot of points as well. So they're not good on the defensive side of the ball lately either, which was a strength for them early on in the season. In their last 5 away, they did allow 102 to Toronto, but it was Toronto in Toronto. We know how much they score at home. Like if you allow over 100 points to the Raptors at home, you're not a good defense. So they've allowed 119, 113, 106, 116 in their other 4 out of those 5 games away from home. So just bad on offense, bad on defense lately for the Wizards. Now, Phoenix, on the other hand, being without Booker, we do have to think a little bit about what they're going to be able to accomplish. I want to look at each side of the ball a little bit, just offensive and defense. So since November 1st on offense, Washington has scored over 110 5 times. That's in a month and a half now because that's November 1st. For some context, Phoenix has done that 15 times in the same period, so 3 times as much. On the defensive side of the ball, in the last 10 games, Washington has not held an opponent under 100 points once. Before that, they had done it 7 times. And like I said, earlier on in the season, they were doing a lot better on defense, and it hasn't been true lately. Phoenix has only held people under 100 2 out of the last 10. So holding people under 100 points is not an easy thing to do. But it's just to say that Washington isn't holding teams down much at all. And appreciate the comment here from Jay Carter. Yeah, the ticket yesterday was good. I'm glad you cashed with me, man. Let's hope we get another one like that today, right? Even though we only have 4 games. So appreciate the comment. So defense, Phoenix has been better. Maybe, not as phenomenal, but they're one of the top defenses in the league, and they're going to stay there. One of the key stats we look at is Washington's field goal percentage. When it's over 48%, they're 9-2. The Suns only allow 42.7% from the field at home, especially with Ayton in. I don't think Washington approaches that 48% mark. The Suns have allowed over 48 in 3 out of 10. But Washington now, this is the offensive side. They've only gone over 48% in 1 out of their last 5 and 3 out of their last 10. So Washington's not getting there, and Phoenix generally holds people under that key number. So the question here is about the spread. I think this has gotten juiced up too. I think it was at 7.5 earlier. Right now I'm seeing it at 8.5 at BetMGM is the best thing that's out there. And that gets into an area that's iffy for me. I mean, I will say that in Washington's last 7 losses, They've only lost by, I looked this up at 7.5 because that's where it was when I was prepping for this video. They've only lost by less than 7.5 twice. They lost by 6 both of those times. So the other 5 times, it was actually over 10 points in all of the 5 other games. So I do think that I can see Phoenix winning by 10 here. Honestly, I can see Phoenix winning by 20 here, but I don't feel 100% confident in it. I actually have this feeling that Spencer Dinwiddie being out for Washington could be a positive for them. I'm not saying he's a bad player, especially when Beal's out, but lately he's done almost nothing. And I think he's actually hurt them on offense. And so I actually feel like Dinwiddie being out could be a positive for the Wizards tonight that maybe allows them to keep it a little bit closer. Um, Again, looking at the trends, there is a lean in the trends towards Phoenix covering this spread more so than the other way. I would say it's like 60-40, so not overwhelming from at least the things that I looked at, but there is a little bit of a lean in that direction. So, with that said, this is a game that I may look at live. I mean, I can hope, even though it's unlikely, that Washington could have a good first quarter and maybe I get back down to that like 5.5 range on Phoenix. It's hard to see Washington hanging with them for this whole game. I think they could maybe for a little bit. So that's the 4 games for today. Again, leave me any comments here on Twitter. I'll be posting my official plays here before too long. And appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate any feedback and hope that you do well on all your picks today. And as Tech would say, stay green. Have a good day, everybody.